Hey everyone, it's Colby Evans, aka Startin Parker here, and I know what you guys are thinking. This isn't the ARCA Racing podcast, and yeah, you're right, it is not. It is a brand new show that I am starting up. It is called Open Car Garage, and while we are not talking about ARCA this time, we are talking about the open cars of the NASCAR Cup Series. I thought it would be a fun idea for a new podcast that specifically talks about the open entries of the NASCAR Cup Series, the cars that are not chartered, the cars that do not get the same amount of purse money that the charter teams get, and the struggle that these teams go with on more of a week-to-week basis that they show up rather than the chartered organizations. I just thought that it would be a fun idea. Like I said, everyone knows on my channel I post, the radio frequencies or the radio chats of open teams, whether it's the 66, the 78, the 44, or the 01. And there are a few more open teams. It's just fun. I think it's some stories, that really don't get talked about enough unless it's like a super competitive team, fielding an open entry like a colleague or an RCR where they do get some TV time. It's fun to talk about and shed some lights on the days that the open cars like the 66, the 78, the 44, the 01, and we'll still talk about the 33 and the 62 and 13 when they show up. But it's just fun to talk about those guys and gals because they usually don't get the amount of TV time that, they deserve. So, we'll start off with this past weekend at Dover. Now, I am starting this up mid-season, so it would have been nice maybe to start this up at the beginning of the year, but I didn't have the idea at the beginning of the year. I literally just thought of this over the weekend, and like I said, I thought we would do a nice test trial run, see how you guys think, and if you guys like it, we'll like I said, we'll keep this up on a weekly basis where we have open car entries in the Cup Series. But this past weekend, now it's kind of weird to say, but we actually had, just based off of recent events, we had 7 unchartered entries. Now I know that sounds kind of funny, but due to obviously the recent legal battles that has been Front Row Motorsports and 2311 Racing versus NASCAR, like I said, I'm not totally 100% familiar with what's going on there, but the only thing that we do know is that they were listed as unchartered entries and were listed as open cars this weekend, so we technically have to talk about them. And the real unchartered entry, the 37th entry this weekend, was the 44, the return of NY Racing and JJ Yaley for the first time since, I believe, Pocono, when they ran with Brennan Poole. So it was great to see the 44 back with JJ Yaley. They had Ultimate Tailgating as their sponsor. Like I said, the other 6 were the familiar entries of Bubba Wallace, Tyler Reddick, and Riley Herbst from 2311, and Zane Smith, Noah Gragson, and Todd Gilliland from Front Row Motorsports. So those were your 7 open drivers. There was no practice, no qualifying. Unfortunately, got rained out. So it was going to be a wide open slate as to how these guys were going to perform on Sunday. Now, like I said, we kind of know how, we know how these 6 teams or the 6 teams are going to do. It was just kind of more curious on what the 44 was going to do. But, we still got to keep track of all of them. Obviously the 6 so-called unchartered for now, but they'll probably get their charters back. We don't know the terms of this lawsuit, how it's going to end, but nonetheless, they had their days. I won't talk about them probably too much. In terms of them, Bubba Wallace finished 7th, Tyler Reddick finished 12th, Riley Herbst finished 24th, Todd Gilliland 25th, Noah Gragson crashed out in 32nd, and Zane Smith crashed but finished in 22nd. The one I really want to talk about, like I said, is JJ Yaley, because this was probably one of the best races that JJ Yaley has ran. Not just JJ Yaley, but NY Racing Team as a whole since their 2024 comeback. You could even throw in their 2022 comeback, and that was with Greg Biffle. And that didn't last very long, for obvious reasons. JJ Yaley's been the primary driver for their NY Racing Team comeback since 2024. And, the team had a couple of good runs last year. I mean, it was mainly based off default finishes of crashes and stuff, and then collecting a good finish by just staying out of trouble. They returned this year. They were going to run a little bit more of a schedule. Obviously, the Atlanta crash earlier in the year set them back a ways. But they've been able to find their footing again, and they've been getting a little bit better each week. They've started to bring in some different drivers. They had Derek Kraus drive the Coca-Cola 600. You had Brennan Poole drive Pocono. And we saw it with Poole at Pocono where he was able to actually run a pretty competitive pace. Obviously, the 44, they don't have the technical support. They don't have the engine support. I don't think they run any engine leases compared to the top 36 cars, which pretty much all of them, I believe, have some sort of Chevy, Toyota, or Ford lease, obviously. I don't think the 44 does, and if they do, it's a very old lease. I think some crew members on the team joked it's the Hendrick C Motor program. I don't know, I joked with them about that a year ago. I'm not sure if they're still kind of on that. But it's just kind of been overall pace. And like I said, this team, no technical support, no real simulator time, I don't think. They just kind of show up with what they got and do the best with it. And, coming into this weekend, JJ, he's pretty good at Dover. He knows how to wheel a car around Dover. And having no practice or qualifying, I'll be honest with you, I really didn't expect much. I kind of expected a pretty struggling day for the 44 team just because of, I don't think they've been to Dover. I don't think they went to Dover at all last year. So for them to come here, with not really an idea for a setup, I would assume they probably got some setup notes from other Chevrolet teams. Obviously, JJ's driven here before, so he kind of has an idea of what he wants to. But I still, honest to God, I didn't think that they were going to be all that good. But I'm happy to say this was probably, before we get into actually how their day went, this was probably, like I said, their best comeback race since the start of 2024, when they started coming back on more of a weekly basis in part-time efforts. And I'm really happy about that. And I think it's especially impressive considering it was a blistering hot day. JJ's the oldest driver in the field at 48 years old. And like I said, this is a team that, they're not full-time. So, obviously the race starts, JJ's last. He picks up a spot early due to SVG having his tire issues. As the laps continue to click on during the first run, the 44 Vialli actually passes Cody Ware. And then shockingly, and it's kind of shocking to me, he actually went up and passed Todd Gilliland, one of the other, ironically, unchartered entries. And that's kind of shocking because, Front Row Motorsports, they've had a lot of steam. Kind of struggled this year. I think it's safe to say that Front Row has struggled a bit this year. Maybe with just expanding, not getting all that charter money or sponsorship. Even though they have struggled this year, just seeing the 44 actually running competent lap times with pretty much the entire field. He was not far off the leaders, JJ was. He was not that far off the leaders, maybe 2 or 3 tenths. That's also how close the field is at Dover. Not very spread out in the race run. Until about like 60, 70 laps in, then they finally really spread out all around the track. But yeah, JJ was running very competent lap times and actually went up and passed the 34 of Gillen and kind of stalled out behind the 41 of Cole Custer as they came to the, I believe it was the stage end. And, even after, going back green again and the 34 got back by him, what happened towards later in the run again? JJ passes Todd again. And I'm like, okay, so that tells you right there it's not a fluke. He actually has a pretty competent car. And, it's been one of the few things I've said that the real thing that's holding back the 44 program, I would say really is their motor program. If they could get a halfway decent motor in that car, they've got some decent people over there working for that team. And I've said for the longest time, if they can just get an upgraded motor program, that team could do well. And this, I think, really showed it. They can clearly now run with the back of the field. They're not just out there they're not just a field filler making laps. Like what we see with some of the other open entries. And sometimes they are that. I'm not going to deny. Sometimes the 44 just is a car out there making laps. But this was a race where they were not just out there making laps. They were actually holding their own with the field. And, you just got to wonder, was it handling? Was it JJ? Was it the heat finally taking its toll on JJ? You could tell that the 44 car started to fade a little bit as the day went on. Now, like I said, was that the car? Was that JJ himself? Because it was very hot. I think 90 degrees was the ambient temperature, close to 90 degrees outside, probably well over 120, 130 degrees in the car. JJ Yaley does not wear a cool suit, does not wear one. I saw in the pictures of his driver intros, he did not have the cool suit connector. So, like I said, it got very hot in that car. And it was about 250 laps in where I remember hearing on the radio where he first started reporting, that he wasn't feeling all that good. And it's understandable. It was very, very hot yesterday. Very, very hot. And so, the team, by this point, he had lost a few laps to the 34, but he was still well ahead of the 51 and the 88. So the team, like I said, they're encouraging him, wanting him to stay out there because they want to beat cars on pace, for like a team morale thing. They obviously want to finish the race for their sponsor and all that. So, like I said, they give it their best shot. They're giving it their best shot. The laps are clicking by, and like I said, it's just getting hotter and hotter, and JJ's just... I could hear it on the radio. You could literally hear it on the radio. JJ was just deteriorating a little bit more, after lap by lap. It was around lap 300 where he really said he wasn't feeling good, that he could almost throw up in a way. And at that point, I'm like, man, are they going to finish? There's still 100 laps to go. And, you could kind of hear the spotter and the crew chief talking to each other on a separate channel, saying, what do we do? We don't want to lose any more positions. By this point, the 51 had retired. They were running 33rd. All they had behind them was the 88. The 77 who had went to the garage, came back out, had re-retired because they couldn't pick up any more positions. So, like I said, they wanted to try to beat the 88 of Shane Van Gisbergen, who was having, like I said, the tire issues that he had at the beginning of the race. So... they just kind of basically left it up to JJ. As soon as JJ said, I can't do it anymore, and I'm done, the team was going to be like, okay, yep, we'll be done. But they weren't going to pull him off the track. They were just simply going to wait for JJ to say, I'm done. And unfortunately, that would come not too long later, with about 25 laps to go, 26 laps to go. JJ just wheeled in. You could hear it in his voice. You really could. That he did not feel well, almost like a sign of panic. You could just tell he was not doing well, and the team immediately directed him to the apron. You could see him for a split second. You could see him go to the garage on the TV broadcast, and the last thing I heard was just on the team radio. The last thing I heard was, "Hey, get wet towels and get medical there." So you got to presume that JJ may have went to the medical center to either get checked out, get some IVs. So he's a beast. Like I said, 48 years old. He keeps himself in great shape. But man, like I said, the heat was brutal yesterday. It wasn't just him. You saw when they had the red flag for the rain, all the drivers looked freaking spent. I mean, even race winner Denny Hamlin went to go change his fire suit just to physically feel drier, everyone was just spent. It wasn't just JJ, so it was not an age issue, trust me. Everybody was physically exhausted after yesterday's race. And there were a few crashes. Once they did go back going green again, had the 44 finished, they probably would have ended up 31st, which actually would have been their best run of the entire year. But they ended up 34th, which, granted, at least it wasn't last. And it's not the team's worst finish of the year, so there's that little bit going for them. But still, the overall performance, everybody should be very proud. JJ should be proud, and the guys who work for NY Racing should be very proud. It was definitely one of their best, if not their best performance since returning in 2024. And now it's just a question, can they capitalize that on their next race? We don't really know. NY Racing doesn't really announce their next race. I think the only one that we know that they will be at is the season finale in Phoenix, of which we know JJ Yaley will be driving that car. There was a picture going around that they might be going to Watkins Glen, which would be not this weekend, because this weekend's the breaker. It would be the weekend after, right? No, it'd be two, right? No, because that next weekend is Iowa, so it'd be 2 weeks. 2 weeks after that. So yeah, that right there. And they'll probably be at Daytona and Talladega like usual. They show up to the plate tracks. And maybe a couple of more races sprinkled in there somewhere. But it'll just be interesting to see. And I hope they can continue this momentum. I hope they can continue the momentum, getting an updated motor program, maybe getting a few more paid drivers mixed in there. But I think it just also comes down to JJ Yaley, you know. I mean, anyone who's been a fan of my show and my channel, and my Twitter page, I'm one of the biggest JJ Yaley fans there is. I like to call myself the last JJ Yaley fan, but I just like the guy because not only is he up there in age, but he can still wheel a car. Like it's like JJ Yaley got better with age. So, you know, I mean, people can disagree with me on that, but I think he's a hell of a race car driver, especially at his age now, almost 50 years old. But yeah, the finish does not show the impressive performance. And like I said, there's actually a video that I will include during this podcast at some point. You'll see me sprinkle it in here. It probably already has, of me. There's actually a video, and credit to the user that you see on the screen right now, of that video. I can't remember off the top of my head, so I'm going to credit him in the screen right here. But he actually made a video posting it online of JJ actually passing the 34 on pace. It was not a tire advantage. That was just simply on pure pace. So, yeah, excellent job by the NY Racing team. And like I said, for the other 6 entries, they did about as well as they normally do. You know, another top 10 finish for Bubba, maybe a disappointing day, you know, for Tyler Reddick not getting a top 10. Riley Herbst doing what Riley Herbst does. You know, at least he finished, didn't crash. Rough day for Front Row Motorsports. Like I said, 2 of their 3 cars being involved in crashes. And Todd Gilliland, man, you know, it seems like ever since he switched from the 38 to the 34, it's just kind of been downhill. You know, he's better than this, obviously, because we saw it last year. So I don't know what's going on with him, but yeah, definitely the switch to 34 has not gone the way that I kind of hoped it would, because he's obviously better than this. So hopefully they can get it all settled out. But that was kind of Dover. NY Racing shines with their best performance. And like I said, the 6 open cars for now. As far as we know, it's just for the 2 weeks. Bob Pockris did post that it's simply for Dover and Indianapolis. We don't know if that is going to continue into Iowa. I would presume it does, but until we hear an official announcement that it is continuing into Iowa, I am just projecting it for this past weekend at Dover and this coming weekend in Indianapolis. Now, they did also announce something new for the rulebook, where it'll simply be that the highest 6 open cars and owner points will be locked into the field. Obviously, that's the 6 cars that we have mentioned, the 3 front rows and the 3 2311 cars. So they are locked into every race going forward. They will not DNQ. And then it'll be 4 cars on speed. I think they said it'll be 4 cars on speed first. That'll obviously be 4 of the either 4 coming from that pack of 6. And then the remaining cars will be settled by owner points. So teams like NY Racing, Live Fast, MBM, those kinds of teams, you know, that run part-time, I really don't think they have anything to worry about in terms of making the race. I don't think we're going to see in my honest opinion, I don't think we're going to see a DNQ for the rest of this year. I don't. You know, the plate tracks, like I said, I don't think they will. Usually they'll probably just get 40. Maybe the season finale at Phoenix will have 41, but I doubt it. I doubt it. I don't know. So obviously the only time we'll see 41 cars is the exempt provisional, but again, I don't see that coming into play either at this point in the year. That's just kind of for the Daytona 500, just to lock guys like Elio into the show, obviously. But yeah, like I said, that was Dover. Overall in the race, got your opinion. Everyone's got their opinion on that. But super proud of NY Racing Team. And like I said, for these other six teams, it's just kind of, how the legal system's going to go. I'm not really all that familiar with the legal system. I wouldn't say I am, so I don't know. I don't know. So, but we're going to transition into Indianapolis now. Indianapolis, the Brickyard, like I said, one of the most famous tracks, arguably the most famous track in the U.S., host of the Indianapolis 500. I am super happy that the Brickyard 400 is back. I was not a personal fan of the Indy Road Course. I did attend last year's Brickyard 400. Still a little gutted that Brad couldn't pull it off. Will not be attending this year's Brickyard 400, mainly just because my vintage car has really kind of taken a lot of my expenses and I can't travel as much. Trust me, I would love to be in Indianapolis this weekend, but unfortunately I have to budget my costs very heavily with this vintage car now, so I can't go. But I will be watching it, and I hope everyone who does go has a great time. Same amount of cars as last year. We did not get a full field. Kind of surprised by that because the payout is very well for Indianapolis. It always has been, even for open cars. We have 39 cars. We have, of course, the 6, like I said, the 3 2311 and the 3 front row cars. And then we have 3, I like to call them actual open cars. The 66 of Josh Bilicki, the 66 of Josh Bilicki, the 78 of Catherine Legg, and the 62 of Jesse Love. Now, I'm not really sure why it's the 62 and not the 33. I can only imagine that it might be to try to get the 62 a little bit higher in owner points, because the 33 is already pretty high in points, so it might be to try to boost the 62 up a little bit. Realistically, it's the same thing. But yeah, those are your 3 real open cars. Kind of cool for Catherine Legg. She's ran the Indy 500 a few times. Kind of cool that she'll get to, be able to run the Brickyard again, but this time in a NASCAR Cup car. It's been a kind of a trial year for her. She's had some okay runs on the road courses. The few ovals she ran, like I said, it's been kind of a struggle for her. Obviously, the Xfinity starts have helped a lot. But she knows this track. I think she'll do well for what the 78 car is capable of, at least. Maybe a top 30. I don't think a top 30 is out of the realm of possibility. Depending, just because of the experience she has there. But I don't know. Maybe people will say I'm reaching. Top 30 is what I would probably shoot for. MBM. I was there last year with MBM. Just was kind of a little bit of a mess. Obviously, Carl's returned to Cup last year. Just didn't really have the right package. BJ drove the car. It was just engine problems early. So it was just kind of a mess last year. MBM's coming back to Indianapolis this year, a lot more prepared with a big sponsor, and Josh Bilicki this time. And I think it'll go a lot better this time around for sure for them. And then, of course, you got the 62 of Jesse Love with the C2 Energy sponsor. And like I said, for Jesse, it's just about getting laps. Obviously, we don't know if Jesse is going to Cup. We don't know if that is in the future cards for him or if he just is going to be an Xfinity lifer. But obviously, it's just about making laps, getting him some seat time at, one of the famous tracks. Obviously, he's got this big partnership with C4 Energy. So, yeah. In terms of probably who will do the best out of the 3 open cars, or I guess the 9, it's just weird because we have to classify them as open cars based off of the court documents, but realistically they're not. It's just you kind of have to include them. I guess by default I'm probably gonna say Tyler Reddick out of the 9, but out of the 3 real open cars, I'm probably gonna go with Jesse Love. Hopefully they all finish, like I said, just to get some track time. like I said, so we'll see how that goes. Obviously, on Sunday, the Brickyard 400 is its own animal. And I hope fans enjoy it, and I hope it stays forever. I don't want to go back to the Indy Road Course. I don't feel like we need that. Definitely would rather see the Brickyard, even if it's not the best race. It's the damn Brickyard 400. It's a crown jewel race. But put in your comment sections below, in the comment section below, who you think is going to outrun each other the most. The 62, which we have seen is not always the best. They've been hit or miss. 66 or the 78. So you can put that in the comment section below if you guys like. And let me know what you think of this show. Should we continue it going forward? Do you not like the show or things I could improve on? So yeah, let me know in the comment section below, guys, what you think of Open Car Garage. I would love to continue this as a weekly series. Of course, every week we have an open car. Sometimes we do just have the 36 cars, in which in that case we wouldn't do an open car show. But the weekends we do have open cars, we will do a show. So just let me know what you guys all think in the chat. I'm curious to hear the reviews. But until then, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter, and check out the ARCA Racing podcast. That is live on every Tuesday at 7 p.m. And yeah, take care, guys. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you all next time. Goodbye.